globally. The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans for justice. The people's champion. Justice. Justice for all. Justice.
Welcome to another episode of Let's Start Justice with JFJ. As is customary, we're thanking our listeners for joining us each week. My name is Michael Jackson, Executive Director of the organization.
And I'm Jade Williams, Policy and Advocacy Specialist.
So last week, Jade rested on her somewhat of a vacation, but she's with us, rebouncing, I hope. So, it's the time is hot, and I think we're struggling a lot as a country. And it's for that reason that we know that we're celebrating Mental Health Day. And for the second half of our program, well, towards the end mostly, we're going to be joined by Dr. Colleen Gooden, who is a consultant psychiatrist with the Ministry of Health, just to go through the importance of the day and the importance of us taking a mental health break. I haven't had a vacation in 2 years. So I'm taking a little bit of what we call a work from home version.
That's not a vacation, but okay.
It helps somewhat. But for our listeners, certainly ensure that you're taking the time off and ensuring that you're dealing with whatever issues that we have going on with our lives, because it is certainly important for us to take stock of what is happening and ensure that we have the capacity to continue. All right, so that conversation will go on. And for the substantive part of our program, we're discussing an important issue that is child diversion, and we're going to be joined by the director of the child diversion program with the Ministry of Justice, and her name is Miss Venetia Clark Lee. So just tune in for a little bit. Before we go over to you, Jade, with the right, I think we got it mixed up last week. That yes. We celebrated our 50th. Well, nobody got the answer correct, so I'm sure you're going to be posing those questions shortly. But just two quick things in the interest of time in terms of critical matters arising from last week. I mentioned that today we're celebrating World Mental Health Day. But to segue into something else, I'm not sure for those who read the newspaper, we had a cartoon in the Jamaica Observer and another in the Gleaner. In the same week, I believe, that basically suggested that, one, the judges are somehow affiliated with the political parties, and based on that affiliation, somehow they're issuing light sentences to gang members and so on. And, the newspapers, I know the importance of cartoons in commentary, but this consistent and ongoing narrative that somehow suggests that judges are there releasing criminals and unleashing them into society without any due process being undertaken. It's a dangerous narrative that the newspapers are trending towards. And I want to caution the editorial unit of each news media to be careful. Criticism on these issues, they're warranted, and you want to send a signal that, yes, we're not happy with the sentences and so on. And there's nothing wrong with calling for harsher penalties once you are informed on what is provided for in law. But to be putting forward this narrative that suggests that the judges are there complicit in these matters, it's a dangerous one, and I hope that the Jamaica Gleaner and the Jamaica Observer, you do a little bit better with your editorial commentary going forward. And to segue to another matter, and we touched on it last week following the conclusion of the Klansman gang trial, that we anticipated that some of the sentences, the public would be calling for a review of them. I remember one of them that spoke to someone who would have assisted in the furtherance of a crime, for example, getting, I think, 3 years thereabout. So understandably so, the public is outraged. And we also saw from the Director of Public Prosecution, Paula Llewellyn, that she's calling for harsher penalties. For example, the leader of the gang getting life imprisonment, and another, where a gang member getting a mandatory minimum of 40 years. And again, I want to caution the DPP and others that you can call for harsher penalties, but we have to be careful with this use or utilization of excessive mandatory minimum. For example, in that proposal that the DPP is about to make, I heard another news broadcast this morning along the same line. My question to the DPP is it that you're asking for some exemption to be made when it comes to child offenders who can be recruited into gangs? I think we have to be careful what we're proposing to the legislator and what the legislator would be uptaking based on these recommendations that are coming forward. They want to arrest crime in the country, but let's not just go into mandatory minimum as this somehow panacea to crime fighting in the country. Let's not tread down a slippery slope, is my comment for the week. All right.
All right. Thank you very much, Mikhail. All right. So we are going to switch gears and go into our right of the day for this. Well, it's more of a did you know for this week. And we take it from the Child Diversion Act. And in the Act, it talks about what needs to take place when it is that a child is to go under the child diversion program. So where an admission is necessary to go under the program, and where that admission is made, it is not admissible for any court proceedings following the making of that admission, as long as it was in furtherance of putting that child in the child diversion program. Furthermore, where the child has been referred to the Child Diversion Committee for participation in the program, then criminal proceedings shall not be instituted against that child until the period that their participation ends or is discontinued. And we'll talk some more about what those mechanisms would look like to end or discontinue that kind of matter when we go into the substantive topic. And I'd just like to give our general trivia question for today, which is not this one, but it will be posted on our IG page, so you can respond to it via Instagram. Yes, so the question was, you must be between the ages of blank and blank to benefit from the child diversion program. So the starting age and the ending age at which you can benefit from the child diversion program. So you can respond via our Instagram, or you can respond via WhatsApp at 239-7583.
All right. So again, we're talking child diversion, and just to put in context that alternative dispute resolution, ADR methods, it has been something that the Ministry of Justice has been championing in recent years, that will see mediation and so on being used. A critical component is restorative justice and the child diversion program. To indicate to the listeners, the child diversion program started in March of 2020 following the enactment of the Child Diversion Act of 2018. And the program really allows for one to address issues of healing and true resolution for victims, offenders, communities, and organizations that are affected by conflict, but more importantly, diverting child offenders from the formal justice system.
The program implements measures for dealing with children who are alleged to have committed or accused of committing an offense that would be against our penal law, as Mikhail would have said, without going through general formal judicial proceedings. To be eligible for the program, a child must be referred by the police or the court, and once the child is referred, an officer will conduct an assessment and determine whether or not the child is suitable for the program. And the program should work with the child and their family to develop a treatment plan.
Now, the ministry has indicated that they have seen significant successes. For example, last year, 2022, 32 of the 44 children referred to the program from St. Elizabeth completed it successfully. However, 875 major crimes committed in Jamaica between 2019 and 2022 were committed by perpetrators between the ages of 15 and 17. So the question that we're asking today is, how can the child diversion help to mitigate this trend, and what are some of the areas for improvement to the implementations of the program? And we're joined by Mrs. Venicia Clark Lee, who is the director of the Child Diversion Program within the Ministry of Justice. Good afternoon, Mrs. Clark Lee, and welcome to the program.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me.
We appreciate it. Just to put in context the program for the listeners, what is the background, what is the thought process to the Child Diversion Program, and what are the objectives of it?
So, as adults know, we all know that children will make mistakes. Children, especially between the ages of 12 and 17, when they're developing, they will make mistakes and they'll do things that are maybe led by emotion or just because they're misguided. So what the government has done, they've moved to implement the Child Diversion Program, which focuses on redirecting children from the formal justice system, keeping their best interest in mind. So say, for example, you have a child who is suspected of maybe having sexual intercourse with a person under 16, or maybe stealing from a supermarket or something of that sort. They can then be sent to the program once the victim consents, to be provided with information to help them to make, one, better decisions, and two, just to be able to understand more about how their actions have consequences and how that can affect their lives overall.
All right, great.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark Lee. So I heard you mention, for example, like a child having sex with someone under the age of 16. Is it that the act is limited to certain offences? And if so, could you give us an idea of what those diversion offences are?
So the act allows for referrals to be sent to the program from the court or the police. So for the police, there's a schedule of offences that can be sent. So those include, as I mentioned before, I'll list some of them. Damage to property, indecent assault, sexual intercourse with a person at 16. Those things the police can send. We also have offences that can be sent at the judge's discretion. So you'll find where cases where maybe rape, suspected, other matters that the judge will say, okay, this is probably a case, maybe setting fire to somewhere, or matters that would be sent, or incidents where you have children who are considered uncontrollable. Some of those
Which
matters
thankfully is no longer shortly in law. But you said something, Mrs. Clark Lee, based on the question that Jade asked. It would seem as if the police has the powers of diversion for what you would call it, smaller offences, lesser offences, versus the judge that would have greater latitude. Is that the case?
That is the case. So you'll find, because remember now, once so the police can refer the case if they're accused of or they're suspected of committing the offense. So once they're charged and they go to court now, that is when they'll have maybe their lawyer present, and the judge will hear both sides and then present the matter to say, this sounds like it might be a matter for child diversion. The victim can then consent, and then the matter is sent over. Also, the judge has the ability to send matters to child diversion if they believe that the victim is being unreasonable for whatever reason.
Thank you so much. We're going to take the break, Mrs. Clark Lee, and I want to pick up when we return in terms of the diversion requirements. You mentioned one of them. The victim must be a part of the process, apology and so on. What else, and what does that apology process looks like, especially as you outlined just now, if the victim is in fact being unreasonable? We take the break and we pick up with the discussion.
Listen up, Jamaica. At Fosrich, everybody's getting a solar water heater. $20,000 deposit. 6 months to pay. What a deal! Fosrich Financing. Call us 876-937-5099.
Come back to Jamaica to the 33rd Annual Maritone Music Family Reunion and Homecoming, October 27 to 30, 2023. Join us at the Four Diamond All-Inclusive Hyatt Rose Hall Resort in Montego Bay. Maritone group rates are available for a limited time. Check out our reunion 3-tour room special and save. Bring your friends, bring your family, bring your dancing shoes. Kingston events start October 21. Visit www.maritonemusic.com or call 954-558-2002. Sponsored by Jamaica Tourist Board.
You know, so I'm a maestro and I represent for which FM? Which FM? Really rich FM. The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We are unpacking Jamaica's Child Diversion program, and we are joined by the director of the program, Mrs. Venicia Clark Lee. So before we took the break, we were talking about what the process looks like for a child to enter the diversion program. So we've already spoken about the fact that the child must be referred. But after that referral, what are the steps that this child must make to become a part of the program and continue their participation? Mrs. Clark Lee.
So the child has to be between the ages of 12 and 17 to be referred to the program. And as mentioned before, they can be referred whether they're accused, suspected, or charged with a diversion offense by the police or the court. Once that is done, and they come to the child diversion office, which is located, we have 14 offices across the island, and the services are free. So once they come, we conduct an assessment. So we do an intake assessment as well as a risk and needs assessment to determine the best treatment that will be provided for this child. So say, for example, a child might be referred to the program for stealing from a supermarket. But when we do the assessment, we realize that this child is slow in school, the parental support is minimal, or this child might have been exposed to drug use. The intervention for that child will include all the issues that that child presents to us with. So once we understand what is going on at home and at school and with the whole person, we provide the intervention for that child, and we indicate to the court or the police that this is what is going to take place. So we present it to our committee, that is approved, and then the child signs, which is in essence his or her contract to say, we are going to complete this, and once they complete the program, we then report again to the police or the court, indicating that they have completed it successfully, and or we are recommending that the case be dismissed or whatever the court decides. But that is how it goes. So once they come to the program and they complete it, if they were accused of an offense or they were suspected of committing an offense, then it wouldn't proceed any further. And if they were charged, then the charges would be dismissed.
Okay, so that's one thing I wanted to clarify, because I've heard the criticism that basically the child would have to admit to guilt to take part in the program. So is it that they're admitting to guilt, or what exactly is that process?
No, so the act or the law allows for us to be able, the child to take responsibility.
Okay, can you break that down a little bit?
But it does specify, though, that this taking the victim, the perpetrator accepting responsibility does not imply that he or she is saying, I'm innocent or guilty. So because the Child Diversion Act is crafted in such a way that taking responsibility for the offense cannot be used against the child. If, let's say, for example, she doesn't complete the program and has to be returned to the court or the police, whatever was discussed in the child diversion program is confidential and cannot be used. So it doesn't mean that they have to say, yes, I am guilty, or no, I'm innocent, or so, to be able to access the program at all.
All right. Great. You were speaking through some of the diversion options, and we understand that the treatment plan and so on is based on that individualized approach.
Yes.
But can you refresh us and advise the listeners what are some of those diversion options, generally speaking, whether it is doing some voluntary work, they can come to JFJ if the ministry is so inclined. But what are some of those programs that the children are looking at?
So we try to include programs that will focus on rehabilitation or just getting our young people better and being able to make better decisions. So those include counseling for both the individual as well as the family. It also includes sexual and reproductive health, counseling, and education, because as teenagers, you understand that they'll be exploring and they might not know the consequences of their actions. We also have mentorship so that they can have positive role models and guidance that can be provided to them while they're in the program. We also have drug use and misuse intervention through the National Council on Drug Abuse. We also have vocational training and maybe educational support. So if we realize that the child is not at a certain level, then we will recommend that. We also do psychoeducational assessments to determine if there are any learning challenges that they might be having or any challenges overall that we might be able to assist with. And we use restorative justice that is also a part of the ministry to be able to, resolve conflicts when the need arises.
Absolutely. And just to clarify, you mentioned family counseling and so on, but when we look at what would be the equivalent of a social inquiry report, we look at the background with the home life and so on. And if it is that you find that the parental skills perhaps may be somewhat wanting and need some improvement, do you provide training support to parents to improve the capacity to deal with the issues that the child may be displaying, the behavioral challenges and so on?
Yes, so that is the family sessions usually help the parents to be able to deal with that and help the child as well to be able to express how he or she is feeling. We also partner with other government entities such as CPFSA to ensure that because they provide a parental support or parental skills training that is ongoing. So we tap into that and we inform the parents, okay, this entity provides it. We also know that there's a National Parenting Support Commission, those areas so they can get the information they need. And as much as we might think that some of the parents might know about it already, some of them might need, welfare support. So we let them know about maybe poor leave or PASS and so on so they can get the help that they need.
Okay, great. I know Jade has some monitoring questions for you, Mrs. Clark-Lee, but before we get into those, one of the, let me not say limitations, but one of the areas for consideration, we have children, as you know, they have multiple issues affecting them, and sometimes the type of programs, despite the best efforts of the ministry and your team, you may find that we may not get the result that we would want with a child. How many times can a child come into the program before you say, we can't do anything else with you? And what would be the next step for that particular child?
So there are two ways to answer that. A child can come into, they have up to 3 referrals that they can get to the program. However, you cannot be referred a second time within 3 years. So there's a 3-year window that they should not reoffend. So say, for example, let's use a police case, for example. The child might receive an informal warning for, we see that you're staying out late. That might cause issues with you and maybe gangs or whatever the case is. That is sent to child diversion, but nothing, the child receives the warning and that is the police action. Then it can move to a formal warning now where it's getting more concerning, and that is something that can take place, as well as there is, just lost my train of thought, pardon me. So
and I'm sorry, and my memory slipped me as well, because I know the answer while I asked it, but I couldn't be of any assistance to you. My apologies.
No worries, I remember. So it's a police caution. So I just gave you that to show you that they can come to the program a maximum of 3 times, but they should not reoffend within 3 years. So if you come to the program at 13, and you completed the program at, let's say, 14,
Yes.
at 17, you shouldn't come back to the program before you're 17. Otherwise, you'd automatically disqualify yourself from the program.
And then you would have to face the full
Yes.
extent of the law as it provides for.
Yes.
Again, Jade has her monitoring questions, but forgive me. We do training with parents within school settings, Mrs. Clark Lee. And as you can imagine, we get several referrals to JFJ with parents who need some assistance based on, the challenges that the children would encounter and would display. We also do trainings with law enforcement officers. And one of the things we're seeing, Mrs. Clark Lee, is that parents are not aware of the child diversion program. Not all law enforcement officers are aware. How can we improve the public education, you think, or what assistance can JFJ and others provide to spread the word?
First of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity to spread the word about the child diversion program. I know the ministry itself, we have been on a drive through the minister, Honorable Delroy Chuck, to spread the information about not only child diversion, but the social justice services that are provided at the ministry across the island. So we have been on a campaign, going to churches, schools, communities, having fairs, just sharing about information, because now we're talking about child diversion. And it is new because implementation was in 2020, and that is right on COVID.
Yes.
So a lot of people were, not able to get that kind of information out there, but we are spreading the information. We also have restorative justice. We have the victim services unit. We also have, expungement and so on. So ways like these, we can use them to spread the information, but I do know that the ministry is on a drive. The minister himself is leading that charge to ensure that Jamaicans are aware of how they can access justice services, and most of the services are free. So what I mentioned before, most of them are free. So stakeholders like yourselves and who know about the program can definitely go ahead and share the information, and they can go to our website, moj.gov.jm, and just get information about the programs that are offered and provided by the ministry.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Well, I'll ask one more question in the last 2 minutes here before the break. And I wondered, as you spoke about, for example, reoffending within that 3-year period would make you automatically disqualified from being referred back to the program. Is there any monitoring of a child that has already completed the program? So once you finish, does the ministry do any follow-up outside of just hoping not to see this child's name again in calling with an offense?
So it is awesome that you asked that question, because the ministry is actually in the planning stage of conducting what we call a tracer study to determine what is happening with the children that came through the program. As mentioned before, the program is relatively new.
Yes.
So we're hoping to give them that window period of, once you complete the program, the 3 years. So for the ones who completed the program, we want to monitor them and see, okay, how has the program impacted your behavior and your ability to make better decisions? Did you reoffend? Did you, those things that are not usually tracked, or those things that are not, we don't have right away, because for a lot of the young people, once they complete the program, they're so happy that they just want to move on with their lives, They want to see court, they don't want to see. But we are planning to do a study in the upcoming financial year, to see how much of an impact we've had on these young people.
Great. Mrs. Clarkley, just stay with us for a few more minutes. When we pick up after the break, if you could just tell us the overall number since 2020 of children that have been a part of the program, if you have access to it, and who would have fully completed versus who perhaps had fallen out, depending on how you track the information. Please, but we take the break.
Hungry for deals? Get the famous bowl combo from KFC, available for just $590. KFC, it's finger licking good.
The time by KFC is
29 minutes going up to 2 o'clock.
Do you know someone who has been affected by breast cancer? Were they able to receive the treatment they needed? Every year, hundreds of Jamaican women are being diagnosed. Sadly, not all can afford the treatment they need, but you can help. Jamaica Reach to Recovery and ICWI present the ICWI Pink Run. Put on your tutus and tall socks for this year's color edition. Get ready to run, walk, and have fun. Sunday, October 29, Hope Botanical Gardens. Visit pinkrunjm.com for more information and to register.
KFC, tastes so good with the price we love. For the famous ball KFC we are go. So delicious, what a good deal this. I'm satisfied, I'm a bucket now famous ball. Best tasting food for your money. So delicious, everybody love it. With the chicken, corn, mashed potatoes, melted cheese and gravy.
Hungry for deals? Get the famous bowl combo from KFC. Creamy mashed potato, delicious chicken, melted cheese, corn, and gravy, plus a Pepsi for just $590. Also available in barbecue. KFC, it's finger licking good.
The ultimate station to listen on the island is Bridge 99 FM. And remember, you ask the Bush lad say, to the world, Bridge, ever live. Bush.
The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love.
Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. We're talking child diversion with Mrs. Vanessa Clark-Lee, the director of the child diversion program at the Ministry of Justice. Mrs. Clark-Lee, before we went to the break, we were asking you if you could just give us an idea of the numbers. How many children have been enrolled and successfully completed in the child diversion program versus how many perhaps had, I don't want to use the word dropped out, but I can't think of a better term at this time. And what were some of the reasons behind it?
Okay, so since implementation, we've received a little over 1,000 referrals, and individualized diversion programs or their contract, as mentioned before, have been signed by just about 1,000 children. Completion, we have almost 500 of them completing the program. Unfortunately, though, we've had to return 162 children to the referral entities. So that includes the police or the court, and they can be returned for a few reasons. One, they're not compliant with the program, so they don't show up, they don't complete the intake process. They might sign the individualized plan, but they don't participate in the activities. So after 6 months, we have to now make a determination to return that child. The child can also be returned if he or she reoffends, as well as if the court decides to withdraw the case or if the matter is withdrawn otherwise and where it is indicated to us, so we have to return the case. Unfortunately, we do have some matters that we're unable to locate the children because all other options, we have exhausted the options, contacted the police, and so on, and the child, we cannot locate the child.
Oh. And the Child Diversion Act, it's what, 5 years coming up. Is there an anticipated review anytime soon of the act?
There is. The ministry has already started their internal workings, and I know that there's some initial consultation that should be taking place, but I do know that we have started in terms of making preparations for the revision of the act. Okay.
If you could, just from where you sit, any of the areas that jump out for review, and let me just state my recollection of the act, I need to revisit it shortly. And you made mention of it, when the child is not compliant and so on. I think my reading of the act puts maybe the greater burden on the child rather than the parent. That's my recollection. I'm not sure if you recall that section, or if you could generally speak to that, or any other areas for improvement.
So what we have done thus far as you mentioned, we have taken note of the fact that sometimes the parents will feel like they can take a back seat in the process, and because of that, the compliance rate might be lower than it might be higher than it needs to.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yes.
The
It could have
compliance
been
rate
much
might be
higher, the
lower than
parent
it
being a
needs
little
to
bit
be.
more involved, and
Yes.
yeah.
So that is one area that we are looking at. We are also aware that there are some other areas that can be tightened up. So we are talking to, the people on the ground will be able to provide a more fulsome, description, or they can explain the issues that they have. Because with anything new, you'll have teething pain,
Yes.
and you'll only realize what is happening once you start the implementation.
Yes.
So because of that, we're going back to the drawing board, and I know the unit in the ministry that focuses on that will definitely be ensuring that all the relevant stakeholders are involved in the process.
Okay, great. Any last questions from you, Jade?
No, I think that we have quite well broken down how the act applies.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to hear that the consideration for revision is on the horizon. And we look forward to how we can participate in that process when it begins.
And Mrs. Clarkley, please continue the good work. Let me tell you, JFJ supports this program.
Yes, we do.
A lot, because I think we have to get to a stage where we understand that retribution and so on has to be a place in how we address crime. But when it comes to children, I think we always have to ask the question, what would make a child act in this particular manner in the first place? And I think the Child Diversion Program stands in a good position to address and prevent our children from going down a road and a path that we wouldn't want them to. So thanks again so much. And the last word before we close out from you?
Just thank you for the opportunity to share the information. I also want to highlight that the ministry is committed to serving the children and keeping the children's best interest in mind. We also want to be able to indicate that the officers on the ground are willing to be able to share information with community members. So as mentioned before, if you want to contact the ministry, you can go to moj.gov.jm, or we also have a toll-free number, 888-JUSTICE, where you're able to access information about the service, and then we can provide information in your community wherever you are. And the services are free.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. Have a good day, Mrs.
Thank
Clarkley.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, so as we shift focus, it's a well-packed program this week.
Yes, I'm asking for 2 seconds to say that our 50th giveaway special trivia question is on the IG page.
Oh, please go ahead and let them know what it is before.
Okay, so we have, what is the first topic or the first episode of Let's Talk Justice? So it's on our IG page. You can respond via Instagram, or you can respond via 2397583.
And I asked a question last week, Jay, that nobody got.
Yes, I have it prepared as well.
Oh, you're going to be launching it as well? Okay. All right. I hope Dr. Colleen Gooden is on the call, consultant psychiatrist, to speak to us about World Mental Health Day. Dr. Gooden?
Yes, good afternoon. I'm here.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining JFJ's program. And I know you're down by the Jamaica Conference Center right now. What is happening down there?
Yes, today is World Mental Health Day, and we are having our National Mental Health Conference at the Jamaica Conference Center. It's 2 days, began today and continues tomorrow.
Yes, and we're so sorry that we couldn't join. We look for, and for those who don't know, disabilities for JFJ has been a critical part. So we're happy, and I don't want to conflate the two, but we're happy about this particular day that is being celebrated. And the theme is mental health is a universal right. What does that mean?
That's correct, yes. Mental health is a universal human right. Here, the World Federation for Mental Health selects a theme under which we observe Mental Health Day every October the 10th. And this year, the theme, as you said, is mental health is a universal human right. So what we're focusing on is the whole need to end discrimination, the whole need to ensure that persons who have any mental health issues are treated, with respect to their human rights, the right to autonomy, the right to liberty, the right to, access to treatment and so on, that we want to look at this as a human right issue.
All right, perfect. If you could give some recommendation, even within the context of workplace, so for example, at JFJ, we just started an initiative where you can take one mental health day per quarter. That day that you can just call your manager and say, listen, I just can't come to work today because mentally I can't manage, What would be some of the recommendations within the context of the workplace that you can recommend that we adopt?
Yes. One of the important things that organizations need to look at is a workplace mental health policy. One of the things which has been shown to be helpful is that there should be open discussion about mental health issues. A lot of times there might be persons in the workplace who may be suffering from a mental health issue, and managers and co-workers, rather than try to intervene in a sensitive way, would ignore it, or talk about it behind the person's back. So that is a policy really should be in place to try and assist persons who may have a mental health issue. There should be ongoing education on mental health issues and how it can affect people personally as well as at work. And there should be some effort made to ensure that people have access to care. So employee assistance programs are things that workplaces can put in place to ensure that people who need the help are able to get the help when necessary. Access to help is really very important.
Absolutely.
So
What are some of the, what's the word I'm looking for? The types of mental health issues that persons experience. What does that look like, and what can we look out for?
Okay, well, that's a good question. And it's important as we look at ending stigma and discrimination that we realize that most mental health problems are invisible. So people think about mental health as mental illness, and people who are very ill maybe on the street or acting in a very strange way. But the reality is that depression and anxiety are really the most common mental health issues that we see and that exist. So, the symptoms of depression, low mood, not functioning well at work, having issues with sleep, concentration, feeling very anxious and worrying excessively. These are some of the common mental health issues that, all of us as human beings would go through. They're very common issues.
Okay, great. And from where you sit, Doc, what would be some of your recommendation for coping strategies and mechanisms for persons who may be experiencing different mental health issues, the depression and so on that you mentioned?
Okay, well, it turns out that the universal approach to keeping healthy works not only for physical illness, but for mental illnesses as well. So the approach of a holistic kind of approach to health, exercising, resting, eating properly. In terms of the mental health aspect now, we look at having a support system, having someone you can talk to if you're feeling overwhelmed, social support systems, church, belonging to a group of people, having healthy relationships, finding time for rest and recreation, having a hobby, those kinds of things. Yes, all of those things do help with our mental health.
All right, great. Anything from you, Jade?
I have been listening and I'm thinking about, as you spoke about the workplace, the issue of access, just as a general population continues to be a challenge. I don't know if you'd have any recommendations for our leadership or government as to what kind of things they can implement to make that access better for us.
Okay. Well, I know that the government, the Ministry of Health in particular, has been training people in the community as kind of like first aid responders in mental health, right? So there are certain persons who have been trained to recognize when things are happening in the community and to reach out and to provide a little first aid, psychological help, and refer people on. But one of the things that I think need to be addressed and will be addressed is on the books to be addressed is the whole issue of the Occupational Health and Safety Act, right? To include mental health hazards. I had looked at it recently and I realized it really does include mental health hazards.
But that's good that you're recommending that.
Yes. So we need to think about, not just only how where you work would affect you physically, but how can it affect you mentally? Do you have enough space to move around? Is the area well ventilated? Is there light? Do you get time for lunch? That kind of thing. So those things need to, that's where we really need to look at more in a more official kind of way. What is the organization's policy going to be on keeping people mentally healthy and productive?
Great. Is there a policy template on this workplace mental health policy? Do you have templates that the Ministry of Health is sharing?
Yes, not sharing at this moment. I think it's still in a draft form.
Yeah.
But certainly the mental health unit at the Ministry of Health has been looking at a workplace mental health policy, yes. And drawing on other jurisdictions. Because there are several other countries that have recognized the importance of it and have, gone ahead and made certain things part of their legislation.
Yes. What advice would you give service providers? Because you work within the Ministry of Health, so you know this very well, I think. But for those of us who work in service provision, the non-profit sector, you deal with some real hard issues sometimes. You have victims and survivors of rape and so on. How can the service providers get that extra support? Because you're taking on what is we call it heavy work for us. What advice could you give service providers like JFG and others based on the work that we do?
You mean for yourselves or
for the staff?
For the staff.
Who taking on so many problems sometimes, yes?
Yes, so there's a thing called secondary trauma. You're being exposed to a lot of the traumatic situations that you're trying to help people with.
Yes.
Right. So, it comes back to self-care, yes. So there's that individual responsibility to look after yourself, to take a break when you need to take a break, to seek help if you need to seek help. And as a corporate body, I think you could put in some mechanism to check and see how people are doing. It may be debriefing with a psychologist. Somebody could come in with you and do a debriefing every now and again.
Yes.
It may be some other policy you put in place. As you said, well, yes, you get a day off or you get a staff welfare day, something like that. But put something in place in terms of a policy, that you would say, okay, this is how we're going to deal with it if you're recognizing that secondary trauma is something that can happen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gooden. I will certainly be sharing this information to my non-profit counterparts. Any last word from you, because we passed the break 5 minutes ago?
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I just want to, congratulations to you for having this kind of discussion. And we just really want to have people more open to the discussion about mental health, not in a discriminatory way, but in a more inclusive way.
Absolutely. And thanks so much to you and the good work that you're doing. And I trust that the conference will go well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
We take the break.
Hi, I'm Ronald Thwaites, and I'm the host of The Public Eye and The Open Mind on The Bridge 99 and Ira Jam in the tri-state area. This program will tell you the truth about life backyard. Fair, open talk. No gossip, no slander. We want to listen to your concerns. Also want to help you with your problems in JA. We at The Bridge rate you and affirm our oneness as citizens of this blessed land we love. So join us now on Wednesdays on The Bridge, crossing the waters, linking Jamaicans and Jamaican lovers everywhere.
Open sesame, here comes Rastaman. So what are you eating? What are you drinking? Abacadabra, catch me if you can. What are you reading and what are you thinking? Join I, Lalabella Gorilla, aka Tony Rebel on Raspirance as we trot on the Bridge 99 FM. Uplifting reasoning to uplift the nation. Tune in to Raspirance every Friday from 10 a.m. until 12 p.m. for a fresh experience on the Bridge 99 FM to the world. Fire Fridays!
One Jamaica, looking at the bigger picture.
The people's champion. Our mission is.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We were having a very good conversation. Well, two actually,
Yes.
and I enjoyed both. So I just want to say thanks again to Mrs. Clark Lee from the Ministry of Justice. Just by way of information, I have to make the announcement to keep JFJ accountable and myself in this regard. You know that we have a little Know Your Rights booklet. One of the things that JFJ is looking at is how we can do a youth-friendly version of that book where we advise youngsters of their rights and so on. Because I think we're seeing too many alarming things in the news cycle, you know, stepping on shoes and then beating someone up. I remember there were 2 incidents of that nature. One of the topics we touched on a few weeks ago, we demonstrated, for example, that far too many incidents are happening there where we have young people being the perpetrators of sexual violence towards those who are younger than they are, their younger counterparts. So what can we do? So JFJ is developing this little booklet, and it's going to be focusing on knowing your rights as a child, as provided for in the Constitution of Jamaica, as outlined in the Conventions of the Rights of a Child. We're going to be looking at things like the diversion policy within the book so that we can have children being aware. So we've started that process before, and it's something that I'm personally looking forward to, and I know the team is as well. So as we go out into these school interventions and interact and interface with the youngsters, they have this little booklet that they can read. It's a part of social justice. We need a local word on Marcus Garvey in the book too. I'm so excited about this prospect, by the way, because I think our generation needs assistance in becoming better versions of themselves. So where we can play a little part, that's important. Yeah.
Well, I've been told that we need to start a TikTok. So
don't know who are gonna manage that, but anyway, we have to definitely have a dedicated social
we
media
might
officer.
need a dedicated TikTok officer.
Because TikTok is a whole vibe by itself.
Yeah,
I'm
it
not
is,
on it,
it
by
really
the way.
is.
I can't manage so much social media things.
It's very overstimulating.
No, I'm just a
but
Twitter person, just news.
That's where the kids are.
And I think it has to be done in a fun and light and engaging way. Listen, people not go on social media if you go here heavy, you know.
Absolutely right.
And I think that's, it's the truth. So I think when we're doing rights, information and so on, we have to reimagine how we share information, because otherwise the audience that you intend to see and visualize that information, you won't be getting it.
Yeah.
So as I said, TikTok is a whole vibe. That's how the young people speak, by the way.
We'll have to hire
A whole vibe.
We'll have to hire the children of JFJ staff, start managing our TikTok presence.
Yeah, my son is a user.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to mention so we have 3 trivias out right now.
Mhm.
Our general trivia has already been won by It's Petrino, who correctly said that you must be between the ages of 12 and 17.
And to be honest, though, Petrina get the answer about 3 times during the program.
Yes. Yes, but I see that it came in shortly after Miss Clarkley shared it.
Exactly.
I'm hoping she was listening, and so that's why. But yes, it's Petrina has successfully won. We haven't gotten our responses for our other 2 trivia questions as yet. The second one that I had posted, or giveaway trivia, was what was the topic of the first episode of Let's Talk Justice, and our final giveaway trivia for today is what is the name of JFJ's first radio show and where did it air? So those are both posted on our IG. So you have until the end of today at 5 p.m. to respond. If you don't respond within that window, I'm afraid that there is no more prizes to be won.
Yeah. All right. So before we close out, and hopefully someone gets even one of those questions correctly.
Yes.
What is your self-care tip? Today's World Mental Health Day.
Wow.
What do you do for self-care?
You know, I feel like I'm the wrong person to ask.
Oh, wow. You know
okay,
what
but
works?
I'll say I run. So I've taken up long distance running, and I find that is, as Doc was sharing earlier, it is exercise continues to be a good way to help to maintain your mental and physical health.
And for those of us who can't run, we walk, right? So I walk with my little 8-pound dumbbell, and it does help where you feel as if all the stresses of the world, it's just removed from your body during this particular time, and I feel re-energized. So the walking helps for me, and I watch TV a lot. So there are some bills that are paid within, even before it's due. The Netflix, the Disney Plus,
yes,
the cable bill, the light bill, because all of them connected, and the internet. Yes, because it's my little way of ensuring that I keep sane, and so on. So we're just encouraging people to take mental health seriously and take stock of how you are addressing the issues. But one of the things I want to point out, and by the way, this came up recently in a media article, that parents were not taking mental health seriously among our children. And it is something that we have to be mindful of. I can tell you sometimes in the earlier days when my son used to come and say that he's stressed out. When you're paying the bills, you kind of roll your eye because you're wondering what's stressing this child out. But as you become more informed on mental health issues, you recognize that children are facing their own hardships, whether it be mild to severe bullying in schools, whether it means that they're not coping with the whole heap of homework that they're getting, especially those in grade 6 at the primary levels, with the whole heap of homework as they prepare for PEP and so on. They're overwhelmed by life as well. So to parents, it's not just us because we're getting the light bill and the water bill and all of the bills that come like clockwork, right? That's not only the type of stresses that we face. Our children are also facing their own challenges. So my little word of encouragement to parents is to be mindful and ensure that we're playing a supportive or supporting role to our children as well. And just be cautious, because far too many of our children facing suicidal ideation and these matters. So,
Yes. Leave a space for that discussion to be had. Okay, so I saw someone attempt our second question. However, they're not quite correct. So I don't think I can award them my special giveaway prize for not being quite correct. So we'll give other persons until the end of the day to respond. But thank you all so much for joining us. This was Let's Talk Justice. We'll be back next week. I'm Jade Williams.
And I'm Mikkel Jackson. Thank you so much for joining.
Justice, the people's champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under law. Justice, Jamaica the and police brutalization. Class, gender, race, or relation. We not tolerate discrimination.
To join the fight against injustice, contact us at 755-4524 or Jamaicans4Justice.org.
The people's champion.
KFC, tastes so good with the price we love. With the famous ball KFC, we are go. So delicious, what a good deal this. I'm satisfied, I'm a bucket now famous. Best tasting food for your money. So delicious, everybody love it. With the chicken, corn, mashed potatoes.